Hello, and welcome to the P1, P2 Travel Hacking Podcast. I am your co-host and P1, Matt Sack.
And I'm the other co-host, Seth Rutner.
Seth, you're our P2 today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Seth. I'm Canadian. I was living in the US for a while, but I'm living in Whistler, Canada now. And I'm building my own travel planning startup here. Matt, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
I'm in Austin, Texas, where if I had to bet, I'd say it's actually a little colder here today, miraculously, than it might have been in Whistler today.
And what's the temp?
It was like low 80s. It was shockingly low for July.
That's cold?
That's freezing cold here in Austin. And so,
okay, all right.
So, I'm out here in Austin, and I'm also building a travel app. And that's kind of why we're here today. We are, the two of us, we are bootstrapping and travel hacking. And we are here to bring you listeners along for this journey with us.
So for you podcast fans, just kind of think of this as a mashup of Reply All and Startup.
Yep, these are like two of our favorite Gimlet podcasts. And so what is this podcast about? All right, so P1 and P2 refers to two-player mode, which essentially is partnering with someone to maximize travel hacking rewards. You're getting amazing free discounted flights, hotels by working together. And that's kind of the spirit of how Seth and I met, because we were both on our own journeys to look for our P2s, so to speak, as founders and co-founders of travel hacking businesses. And we're going to get to that in a minute.
Yeah, like whether you're going to the movies, traveling to a far place, or just playing video games, it's just more fun with a player too. You know, traditionally used to mean your significant other when you're doing credit card churning, but I met Matt and you kind of just hit it off and decided instead of just having our recurring one-on-ones and chatting, why don't we just make this more fun and have a podcast?
We're going to talk about that in a little bit. So Seth is our resident engineer, co-founder, expert, and I am our sort of resident non-technical co-founder. But also we have this perfect balance of Seth is our Canuck, I'm our Yank, and we are going to share with you listeners, again, a little bit more about how we met. And we're going to give you one free tip that at the end of this podcast that you can use if you're interested in getting into the startup game. And it sort of has to do with it, how we met. So Seth, who should be listening to this podcast? Who does this podcast appeal to?
I think if you're into any sort of like travel hacking or even just travel, like getting deals and hustling, that's definitely someone that should be listening to this. So if you're speaking in terms of like CPM, your margin vary, 524, like if you know those terms, you're probably interested in this.
Absolutely. And I'd say the other half of this equation is if you are at all interested in entrepreneurship and you're thinking in terms of MVPs or ARR cap tables, then this podcast is 100% for you as well. Also, separately, if you are like you extra geek out on the term pescatarian, this podcast is definitely for you.
Definitely.
Seth, tell me, what is the thread between those two things? Like this travel hacking community and the actual hackers building companies and apps.
I think it's pretty attractive to people that just kind of like to, I don't want to say like hustle, but you're trying to optimize, find the best deals, almost just be like creative and maximize value. And I think there are like a lot of parallels between spending all this time and effort of building this like really cool business class redemption travel itinerary that's like just optimal. And, you know, it's almost a labor of love because you spend so much time doing it. But I think the most rewarding part isn't like a business class seat. It's just feeling like you got the best possible value and deal. And honestly, that's a lot like business and like founding a company. I'm seeing an opportunity there and like putting a lot of extra effort in to try to realize that.
I love that. Getting max value. And that's what this podcast is all about. So you talked about a little bit about yourself as a traveler. Tell me more about, Seth, your travel bona fides. What's your travel story?
So yeah, I fell in love with traveling when I was 15. Went on like a school Europe trip, and then I went and in my third year of university, I did a semester abroad in Denmark, and I'd kind of forgotten about travel, but then I just like totally fell in love with it. And I remember going for like a week traveling because in Europe, I feel like it wasn't as hard. We had all this time off, and I met all these people in hostels that were just like traveling and having fun. And my friends and I were just off for a week for spring break and went to like Budapest in Croatia. But we like met all these people that were just backpacking around and thought that was really cool. So I always kind of thought about that. And then I graduated and moved to San Francisco and was working away and always kind of was curious to like try that out. So then eventually I had the opportunity and I like took a year off work and just backpacked through like Southeast Asia and
Oh,
East Africa for like a year.
oh,
And I've kind of like went back to work, but honestly, when you do that, often you're just thinking about how to enable yourself to do that again. Kind of, it's very addictive. So I've traveled to 44 countries and 7 continents so far. I worked in Antarctica for 3 months for the United States Antarctic
that's
Program.
that is not a story you told me.
I
Okay, we
didn't
got to
tell
get
you
into
that?
that later. No, I don't
Yeah,
think you did, because I was like, "There's that. That's the seventh. That's the seventh."
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Now
Well.
that was a travel hack in itself, and we can get into that
Okay.
later.
Okay.
But
That's epic.
yeah, it's a hack because instead of get paid to go there, just get a job there, right? But there's more about that later. But I love credit card points. Rack and rock using them for redemptions, trying to
Yeah.
fly business class. And I think a big part of it is like, sure, business class is fun, but I can sleep in economy. It's not a big deal. But
Yeah.
kind of just
Yeah.
like trying the new products, like seeing the latest and the greatest. Checking out like, wow, there's a bar on board this flight, or this is like the best business class seat that's out, or just like, so I kind of want to like travel through airlines all this. Like, I haven't even flown Singapore. I'd like to try their products, etc. So, it's kind of fun, but it is a labor of love. It's a lot. It's difficult to find the availability, and then also racking up the points. There's just all these. It's just a rabbit hole. Um,
That's epic though. 7 continents, 44 countries. I'm behind you. Definitely. I'm 10 countries behind you and one continent behind you. I don't know if I have any interest in going to Antarctica, but maybe you can convince me otherwise. Maybe that's for another episode. My I say feather in my cap is I got 47 states right now under my belt. I'm
yeah,
going to tick
I
off
mean that's
number
pretty
48
impressive.
next week. I'm very excited. My bucket list is I want to get to 50 states and 50 countries
I'd
by
say
the age
50
of
states
50.
is almost harder.
It's
Like,
definitely less consequential. Less in, I think just like who wants to go to North Dakota?
yeah,
That's going to be the last one I hit by far.
I drove through there couple like last month, a couple months ago. It's
It
pretty
would
flat.
any fun anything to report? Pretty flat. Okay.
There's
All
a
right.
good burger place called JL Beers. It's like one of America's
Okay.
like
All
top
right.
50 burgers, but there's not too much going on there.
Okay. Yeah. So okay. So your travel bug was born out of a addiction to this feeling of going to these
Yeah,
hostels, these incredible places.
yeah, I like trying this new things. A lot of it's the food, and then just like the culture, just kind of like
Okay.
the people, just being amongst it. It's just kind of interesting, and you kind
Okay.
of just learn. It's just love of knowledge, really. It's like similar to like if you get in a Wikipedia rabbit hole and just start learning random stuff. It's like traveling and going to new countries. It's got a lot of that, but on a more intangible level.
I love it. I love it. So yeah, for me, my travel, I think my travel bug I caught from my brother. So he started his career as a management consultant. I saw him flying all over the world, and he was working for airlines at the time. And I just this blew my mind that he was going all these incredible places, and I did not have a job that did that, so I wanted to do that, but I couldn't. I wanted to do it, but just for less. My business wasn't paying for it, so it's kind of how I got into this travel hacking community. And I used to travel a ton, and this was before I had kids. I now have 3-year-old twins, but before this, I would tell my then girlfriend or fiance Leah, hey, do you want to go to Bangkok for 48 hours? And we would just fly out and do our thing. Now life is a lot more complicated. I'm not able to do that. So I don't travel nearly as much. But I spend a lot of time thinking about travel, planning travel for the one time a year that I get to go. I also travel very differently than I used to travel. I used to go to hostels and go on a shoestring, and it didn't really matter. Now I think I kind of enjoy those creature comforts. So, the other thing I love doing is just living vicariously through other people's travel, and that's what I
Yeah.
absolutely love. I love chatting with you because you're doing this now. You're still doing this and going all these incredible places, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. We're going to talk about some of this amazing, travel we have planned. But also, Seth, let's tell the listeners about kind of our stories as hackers. So tell me a little bit about yourself as a founder. What are you building?
Sure. Well, I'm building a travel planning app, and that's kind of vague and hard to understand just by saying that. But essentially, what we're specializing in is if you ever go on like a group trip with a lot of your friends, like bachelor parties are like a really common one. Or for me, ski trips, they can be pretty chaotic. Like, hopefully, someone's using like a spreadsheet, but usually not. So the problem and pain point I'm trying to address is like chaos in email threads, group text, and then what it's mainly like when you're on the trip. So like when you're trying to enjoy the trip and you're on it, sometimes it's hard to find that information. It can be like a little stressful and annoying. Like it can just be like the address of the Airbnb to tell a cab driver,
Hmm.
the code to get in. It just kind of like if you go on a lot of these trips, you start to notice it's the same problem
Hmm.
over and over. And it just wasn't working so well for me. Even the most organized trip in Excel doesn't look good on a mobile phone. Like it's a wide spreadsheet. So I've had people tell me like it's in the spreadsheet and it is, but I'm trying to navigate like 10
That's such a great
tabs and
point.
the phone sideways. And I'm like, all right, like there's a better way. Like if I'm an engineer, this is an easy problem to solve.
Yeah.
And so that kind of like gave me a little inspiration when I was doing a lot of traveling last year. And so I just started hacking on that and still going on that. Before, I worked at two startups that
Okay.
IPO'd, and I also worked at a startup that was acquired. So I have a lot of experience with startups, usually from like Series B and up.
Okay.
But I've like seen a lot of things that work. And now that I'm part of like a larger company when we were acquired, it's interesting to just like see the process, but it can be personally not as exciting
So
as
you're
startup
still
world. So
you're still working full time, and you've just been doing this on the side for the last year. Is that
I've
right?
just been doing it on the side. So
That's great. And you're still
it,
bootstrapping the recording of this podcast.
yeah,
You're looking into getting funded, but you've done this all essentially yourself.
pretty much. Yeah. I've just been bootstrapping. So
Yep.
it's an interesting strategy. I don't know if there's like a term for it, but if you can do it on the side while getting paid, it makes bootstrapping a little easier because you have an income.
No kidding. Tell me about that. An income.
Um, yeah, it's definitely a lot of work because you're doing your full-time job, and
Yeah.
then like in your
Yeah.
off hours, you kind of have your side thing.
And you're
You know,
recording a podcast,
and
as one
podcast.
does.
Yeah, so I mean, it's different for sure. It's a lot of effort. Sometimes you think like of just doing it full time, but there's pros and cons.
Yeah.
So this works for me for now, and I'm happy with it. But some weeks you're like, oh man, I'm just like all I'm doing staring at screens. So it is kind of nice to do something like a podcast and like break it up. So
And you
yeah.
didn't even tell the listeners the name of your startup. That's the best. I think the
Yeah,
name is
that would be smart, right?
that.
It's
You
that would be
buried the
smart.
lead. You buried the
Yeah.
lead.
It's called avosquado. It's like an avocado.
Avasquado.
It's like an avocado,
Avasquado.
but
Where?
like, squad. Like you're going with your
Yeah.
squad on a
Yeah. Yeah.
trip. So that name just kind of came out of thin air when I was trying to come up with names. I like was like I had to come up with a name because we were focusing on ski trips. So at first the first names were pretty bad, like Shrimp Trip and like ski trip. It was pretty bad. And then I was like, I gotta come up with something, and I was coming up with stuff like team with two E's, or like Yugo, like YUGO, and I was like, I don't know if these are me, but like they're very like markety, like straight out of like the Y Combinator playbook or something. You know,
100%.
and there's if you Google
I
it,
think you
it
got
matches a bunch of stuff, and then I just came up with this. Didn't exist. The
this.
domain
This
is
is way better
available,
than those things.
and I was
And
like, I
and
think
not only
this is
that,
it.
you've got this beautiful logo too. The
That
logo
was
is the
Yeah. I mean, that was part of the reason for selecting it. Is like one of my advisors, she's like, if you give this to a designer, they're gonna go ham on it. I was like, yeah, that's right. That's a good
that's exactly what they
idea.
did.
Yeah, I love the logo. I love the cute avocado. I'm a big fan of like cutesy stuff. Like, have you ever been to Portland, Oregon? Their parking app, it's called, I forget what it's called, but it's got this cute cartoon cat. So it's very memorable. I don't remember what
I
it's
know.
called, but like that's the
I,
parking app. Just see on all the street signs.
I
And
know
so like
that
there's
they're
probably other competitors, but I'll just use the one with the cat because I think it looks cool.
Their airport carpet is famous. The PDX carpet is famous. So I know Portland is definitely all in
Wait,
on those
wait, what about the carpet?
iconic. It's this crazy design, this like really retro, funky design, and
I just pulled it up.
it became this big
It's like a
phenomenon to go and
casino.
take a picture of your. It's exactly like a casino. You take a picture of your feet on the hashtag PDX carpet, which I think I did at one point because it just is great. Okay, all right. So this is you are both actively building this business and working full time as an engineer. That's
Yeah.
your story as a hacker.
Yeah, that's pretty much my story. What about you? Let's hear about your story.
Yeah, so I am the CEO and co-founder of Disco Travel. We just went through a big rebrand, and I'm kind of living my third career life. The first part of my career, I started out as a teacher. I was teaching middle school math back in the day, and spent 5 years working in education, and pivoted to tech, and then ended up working in tech for 8 years, working in analytics, managing global teams. I worked for Facebook for a number of years, and most recently was working for Wayfair. And I'm kind of living that for third life as an entrepreneur. I've always had that bug. But now I'm building a travel hacking app. So much of what we're going to talk about in this podcast are things that I'm trying to distill down to how can we serve this up on a platter for people who don't really know about all these tips, and they don't want to spend the countless hours of research and reading blogs and everything. They just want to get it served up straight to them so they can figure out how to do this and travel for less. So that's what we're in the process of building. I've got an amazing team of myself and four other really talented individuals who are building this, and we're still very much in that we are bootstrapping, but we're in that pre product phase. We are working on building out our MVP, and we're going to launch this fall. But it's been a really great journey. Doing this full time as well. So I'm doing this full time since February. I am not earning an income like you, and it's definitely a bit of a pinch with young kids at home and a mortgage and everything. But I have an amazing P2 IRL, my wife Leah, who is just a rock and enabling us to do this, enabling me to do this and live this dream. So that's kind of my story. And I want to talk for a second about what is on deck for this podcast and what we have going on for the rest of the season. So this is episode 1. We're very much experimenting, trying out, but we know for the rest of the season what we're planning on having is some amazing guests on in future episodes to talk about just anything that's related to either travel or hacking and building businesses and apps, and even just great industry news and things that folks who are interested in any of these topics might want to learn about.
Yeah, we're gonna walk you through our journeys as entrepreneurs, all the highs, the lows,
Mm-hmm.
stuff we wish you would have known
Mm-hmm.
6 months or a year ago, which I feel like there's always something weekly where you're like, you wish you knew that, but it's kind of part of the fun.
That's definitely the spirit of this. Can we share some nuggets of knowledge that people who want to try this out might benefit from? And the last thing is, we're always going to do this show in two parts. So the first part of the episode, we're going to talk about travel. If you are here and you're down for that and you love travel, awesome. If you are just here for the hacking and building a business part or the entrepreneurship part, we're gonna include timestamp in the show notes so that you can just skip on ahead if you want, or if you just want to stay for both, great. The more the merrier. So we're gonna go right into our first segment of the podcast. This is Hack or Whack, which is the worst name ever. And I think you pointed out this was totally done ironically, right? I totally meant for this to be ironic and not a dad joke.
It's definitely got dad joke energy.
It's got dad joke energy written all over. Okay, but the spirit of this is we're going to talk about some of our travel hacking wins and fails, and specifically we're going to talk about some trips we have planned. So Seth, I want you to tell me what do you got coming up? What's on deck for you? Where are you going?
I've got a few loose plans. I feel like a lot of times with my travel, I'm saving the booking of the flights near the last minute, which sometimes you can get good availability, but I've got a trip to Georgia, the country, not the state, coming up in February for some good cat skiing. So I'm going with about 12 people, and so that should be pretty fun. It comes with some interesting travel hacking challenges and problems to solve. Like, there's no direct flights really to Georgia, and
How do
so
you
that
get to Georgia?
if you try to fly direct, there's a lot of like not so great layover options, like through Turkey or wherever,
Okay.
where it just kind of would be a long transit. But a few of us on the trip, we've kind of come up with the idea of fly to the Alps first, maybe for a week, and do some skiing there in Austria. We're thinking of hitting this one resort. I don't fully recall the name of, but they all
Is
involve a flight to
this
Munich.
Kitzbühel?
Yeah, Kitzbühel. Yeah, that's the one.
Okay.
So that should be fun. Go there, and then I think there's a direct from Munich to
How are you
Georgia.
what tools are you using, or what are you doing to plot this all out?
I use flightconnections.com a lot. So
Okay.
like
Okay.
if you want to find like all the direct flights fanning out of a single airport or all the flights flying into an airport directly, it shows you on a map. It's free. There's like a paid version I don't use. So this is super useful if you're trying to find like a way to kind of build a pleasant, more scenic itinerary. I'd rather like go explore a city than like wait around in an airport. So if you can work remotely, like why not spend 1 or 2 days stopover somewhere and just try to price that out. So I use Flight Connections. So I'm going to use that and see flights to Munich. I'll probably fly to Vancouver or maybe San Francisco. A lot of good direct flights to Munich.
Are you doing this on Air Canada, or where you getting
I
the points from?
Air Canada's pretty good, but I actually have some United points sitting around from like a fail to book first class in Lufthansa. Last year I was going to fly to Greece, and I was looking at all these options super last minute, and I saw like first class came up on like a 747 SFO, and I was like, oh, that could be cool. And so I had it was like 120,000 points. It was like pretty expensive. So I transferred 120,000 Chase points into United, but they didn't show up.
And then
they put them on a hold.
The points didn't show up?
They didn't show up for 2 days. And I like called them. They're like, this could happen. And
no.
so I was like screwed.
Oh,
so
no.
like by the time I got the points, that flight was gone. So I did a backup option, which worked out better. I did 50,000 Alaska points to fly Condor's new business class out of Vancouver to Frankfurt, and that was actually really nice.
Okay, that is a I have not heard of that. The whole, because there's always transfer times, right? You always have to keep in mind: is it an immediate transfer? Is it going to take 24 hours? That's not the story here. Like United transfer from Chase, Ulster Award should be direct, should be instant, and instead you're okay. So you dumped a bunch of points in United.
Or something, yeah.
Oh, that's brutal.
So
okay.
over 100,000
that was
is worth looking into because it was a larger amount.
Okay,
yeah.
That's good to know. So maybe it was just the volume that you were trying to do at once.
It was the volume, but now I have a bunch, and I kind of feel anecdotally, I don't know if this is really the case, but I feel like United has more Lufthansa flights that usually appear. But
so you've got some United points stash, but you tried somehow to get to Munich, and then go from there. That's the plan for this Georgia trip.
Yeah, I gotta price out the flight to Georgia. That one might just be like a cash situation. I'm not
Yep.
sure yet.
Are you doing a CPM comparison every time? Are you down to that level where you're gonna, or you just kind of have a gut for it?
I kind of go by gut. I haven't tried CPM comparison yet, but I'd be curious to give it a shot.
Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
doing? Are you on the CPM comparison train?
You know what? I'm more like I have my what I think is like a good benchmark, and I'm like I think this is good. I know there's Points Path, for example. This is a new browser extension that you can install
Ooh,
that overlays over Google Flights and literally will tell you for the three main carriers in the U.S. whether to book points or whether to book
ooh,
cash.
that's a good.
It's a really good tool because they do that calculation for you, but I would say, they don't have it for most carriers. And it's kind of like this is the way I play poker. I don't usually calculate pot odds to the T. I just kind of have a gut, and I'm like, this is about the bet sizing, right? Like same with cents per mile. I know what's good. I kind of have a feel for it, but I love that you are using both cash and points, right? Because points are not always the answer. Sometimes the answer is book and cash. It makes more sense.
I do it. Yeah, I do a lot of cash booking, especially domestically. Because it's worth it to save the points for a good business class redemption. But if it's a cheap cash flight, I'll just buy the flight, and you'll earn some points too. So it can be beneficial if you're trying to
That's
earn
right.
status.
That's exactly right. That's
You can't
exactly
earn
right.
status if you kiss our always with you.
Yep. So also, can you tell us a little bit about you're going to Georgia, which is I would consider kind of off the beaten path. Like that's not necessarily a place
Definitely.
that would be first time messed up. Like, what is your approach to going to places like that that are not necessarily your standard
Um,
tourist destinations?
Oftentimes you'll travel to one place, and when you're there, you find out about all this other stuff you didn't know about. And so this is kind of part. I go on this like ski trip to Japan with like 18 people every year. And my friend plans it, and it's
You go
amazing. But
every year with
pretty much,
18 people to Japan.
yeah,
How is
it's super well organized. That was honestly the inspiration for the app. I'm like,
Okay.
not everyone has a Brittany
Okay.
in their friend group, but like
Yeah.
everyone wants to go on trips like this. So like, how do you make it easy? So that was kind of the inspiration. But yeah, she plans this trip. It was 12 for a bit, and now it's 18, and now she's back down to 12, and she's decided to go to Georgia. So we'll usually go to
Okay.
Niseko, which is in Hokkaido. Pretty popular there. Like I think it's awesome. Like Japan ski is awesome, but it's like it's almost like Vegas there at this point. Like even like one year to the next, there's like so much new stuff that popped up, so it's like a little hectic. But
That's
still,
crazy.
you're not waiting that long. But we talked to some of the guides, and we're like that have like they're usually like Aussie ski bums that have been guiding for 10 years there. We're like, where are some of the best places? Apparently
Is it good
India
to
near
Georgia?
Kashmir. It's got some of the
Really?
best snowboard. Yeah, best powder skiing. Because for
How?
Japan, like we're making bookings a year in advance to get like the good cat
Yeah.
skiing companies, this, that, whatever. But there's all these undiscovered places, especially if you're gonna do cat skiing or heli, where like you're not dependent on a resort anyways. There's like a
Hmm.
lot of like, so Georgia, it was a tip that came in like let's mix it up. Maybe we'll do Japan the following year. So our friend, she's booked everything. It's all set up in Georgia. We're gonna
That's
go cat
incredible.
skiing, and
That is incredible.
it's a good way to kind of do some off the beaten path tourism. And honestly, we'll get to have some really good food too. Like it's a 1 week thing. I think it's sort of inclusive of meals and stuff like that. So it actually is kind of cool.
So is
Should
the
be
entire
interesting.
group using your app to plan this as well?
Yeah, we're gonna use
That's
that.
awesome. That's awesome.
I Yeah, I think. I mean, I'm not in charge of coordination and planning, so ultimately I'm gonna leave it up to the organizer, but
But you would
I
be
think that's
personally
gonna be
offended
way easier.
if they didn't.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'd honestly want to use it for myself. Like the spreadsheet is really good, but it's hard for me to get info
Yeah.
out of just because it's just such a big, wide format, and my phone
Yeah.
is not. So yeah,
Okay. All right. So your hacks for this trip again, using flightconnectors.com, going on and trying some off the beaten path destinations, and one of your
yeah,
your fails was this points transfer from United that
yeah.
dumped some points there that you might be using.
Yeah, it's one of those fails that you don't think is going to happen to you because you're like,
Yeah,
no, like I've done this 1,000 times. Planes just go through, but then you find out like sometimes they don't. So it was kind of scary, but sometimes it's good to always have a stash of points. But
I agree. I agree.
well, you're saying you got a big stash of coins. Why don't you tell us a bit about your upcoming hacks and
We're
whacks?
going. This one's a bit splashy. This is our so my wife and I are taking a 12-day trip to the Adriatic, and this has been on her bucket list since I've known her, to go to Greece. We've always wanted to go to Greece, and so this is a big birthday. The ones that ends in zeros and fives, and so that's my excuse to be able to splash out a bunch of points and do that. And for me, my bucket list is I've never been on an A380 before. Have you?
Hmm. Yeah, I did Emirates business class on the
Okay.
A380. It's pretty
Okay,
nice.
okay. I would say I'm an aviation geek, but I'm at least an aficionado. I love just the notion of I'm on big planes. Who doesn't like big
Yeah.
planes? So just being able to get to go on that's part of this. Is on the way back, we'll be flying on an A380, an Emirates A380 going back from Milan to JFK. So the three of the hacks that we're using for this trip that have been really, I think, really successful. Number one is just positioning flights. So you talked about doing that a little bit, flying
Yeah,
out to Vancouver, for example, to
that's
get
key.
and for yeah, and for us, we're flying to from Texas to the New York City area for the outbound and the inbound flights, particularly because we're flying Emirates, and that leads to hack number two, which is these Fifth Freedom routes. So if you know Emirates is a carrier, they fly all their flights through their hub in Dubai, except for a handful that do not originate or end in Dubai. And they call these the Fifth Freedom routes. And they have this weird exception to the rule where every other flight, if you're redeeming points on Emirates, it has these crazy taxes and fees associated with them. And if you're flying economy, that's one thing, but they really start ratcheting up if you're flying business or first. And so one way to avoid that is if you're not flying through Dubai, it turns out some of these Fifth Freedom rooms just don't that doesn't apply. And specifically this route out to Athens from Newark, and then this route back to JFK through Milan. We are avoiding all these taxes and fees. So we're talking about $1,000 in taxes and fees on top of 100,000 points. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And so just with a nonstop flight from Texas up to the New York City area, we can get this great redemption and save a ton of money. And it's the same number of connections we would have taken anyway, right? We would have been going through Dubai, then onward to Greece if we had flown out of Houston, for example. So we're taking two stops and spending less money and flying in comfort. It's going to be great. So that was kind of the second hack is leveraging these Fifth Freedom routes. The third hack is brand new. I'm on, like, you talk about spreadsheets. We have a spreadsheet for this trip, Seth, that is 13 tabs long because of all
Yeah,
the changes we've made. And the biggest change we made lately is I've been reading. Are you a frequent miler fan?
I will admit I haven't really read it. I do
Okay.
love Prince of Travel, but he's more Canadian centric.
This has got to be my favorite travel blog of late. I think Frequent Miler is just killing it. And shout out to Nick Reyes at Frequent Miler, who's been talking about the small luxury hotels of the world, the SLH collection. If I don't know if you're big on this, but basically this used to be a collection of hotels under the Hyatt portfolio. They've got these incredible hotels, and recently that transferred over to Hilton, and they just went live. And so now, I mean, I didn't have many Hilton points sitting around. I had some, but these great hotels came online, and so we are, for the first time, we found these incredible redemptions. Shout out to Nick. He did an article on one of them in Italy, and we're staying at one of these hotels, thanks to him. But so those three things alone have made this trip great. So those are the hacks. But I've definitely had some fails on this trip so far. I'm already kind of deep into it, and
Wait,
I haven't even stepped on the flight, and I've had fails. What were you
before
gonna
you
ask?
go into your fails, I was just
Yeah,
curious,
yeah,
like
yeah.
where in Italy?
We're going to Lake Como, which is a place that I've been to before, and I was just blown away by. There's just this like feeling of driving. I don't know. We drove from Milan, we flew into Milan, and we drove up to Lake Como, and you go over these hills, and you just opens up to this world that it's stunning. I don't know. There's no other way to say it. Lake Como is insane. So that's where we'll be celebrating Leah's birthday. So
That's awesome.
those are the pros here. These are the wins. The fails so far. One of them, this blew my mind. I have not had one of these in a while. I just got hit with a flight cancellation fee for booking under 24 hours. I did not know that was a thing, because here in the United States we have regulations such that if you book a flight and you decide to cancel within 24 hours, you just get all your money back. And in Europe, that is not the case. In some cases, they don't have to give you anything back. I booked through one of these kind of budget airline low-cost carriers. I booked through EasyJet. Have you flown them before?
I have flown them before.
Good, bad, ugly?
Really good. It was like, they're good. They're like a slight step above Ryanair.
Okay.
It's like $30 or something. I think I did like $30 for like an hour flight, 2 hour flight.
They're so cheap. These tickets are insanely cheap, but we have bags, so I tacked that on, and then decided to found this incredible redemption through the Hilton. This new Hilton hotel popped up, so wanted to change everything around, and decided to cancel these flights, and I had to eat a fee for the first time. Hadn't experienced that, so that was that definite fail. Just be aware of that. If you're booking in Europe, these U.S. rules do not apply. The second fail is what I would say is these speculative transfers. It was kind of like what you were talking about for your United transfer over for those Lufthansa plans. I did this years ago. I just got a hoard of Capital One points from this crazy spend $50,000 Capital One business card deal where I got 300,000 points out of this. And I decided the Emirates ratio dropped down from 2-to-1 to 1-to-1. So I just pumped a bunch of points in there thinking Emirates, I've never flown Emirates, I want to try it. And this has like dogged me for years. I've had these points sitting there. We redeemed a lot of them on one trip, and then the taxes and fees went up, so we didn't use them. So we just had a bunch sitting there. So what I would say is, if you're if you're thinking, hey, I have a bunch of points, why don't I just transfer them over to some program without having a trip booked necessarily, or even a trip planned? Beware, because devaluations happen all the time. That's what happened with these, and I had to keep the points alive. So we're burning some of these. And the last fail, this kind of caught me off guard a little bit. We're jumping around a little bit. So we're going from Greece, we're going to Croatia, and then we're eventually going on to Italy. And these flights between locations in Europe, these kind of intra-Europe flights, I just kind of assumed that they were more regular, but it turns out they're really inconsistent. So to get a nonstop flight, for example, between Dubrovnik and Milan, they'll have one like every third day or every other day, and just kind of seemingly random times. And so that's added another layer of complication. I don't know. I would have thought, like, in the United States, if you want to get some, Cincinnati to Salt Lake City, you're going to be able to, it seems like you get there pretty regular. That's and that's not the case. So that was a bit of a surprise. So those are some of the wins and fails. But Seth, I will tell you this trip, this one I'm proud of. I've spent $2,200. I spent $2,200 out of pocket. I want you to guess the cash value of this trip, this 12-day trip. Flights, hotels, all transport, and there've been a lot of points. I've burned about, let's call it 600,000 points. What do you think the cash value of this is?
Cash value, like if you were just to book it all just cash.
Exactly.
Well, you got 2 passengers, round trip business on Emirates. So that's like 20 grand. Maybe 40 grand at least round trip, and then you're way over. You're way over. You're supposed to guess lower, and the number is supposed to be bigger, but you're not that far off. It's okay. It was 27K. Okay,
all told for all these, but all that to say, it's that leverage, right? The points and transferring points and doing all this. That's the way to spend 2,000, because I would never spend that money on a trip. That's just not our lifestyle. So down to one income. But we're able to do this and travel for so much less, and that's what
I like about it too. That's like really why I'm trying to rack up the points. Like, also, can I talk about Dubrovnik? Are you flying in or out of the airport there?
We are, and this has become a bit of a nightmare because we have a 5:45 a.m. flight out of Dubrovnik.
Sounds tough.
And we're getting in like 10:30 2 nights before. It's gonna be a bit. Do you have any advice? What I should or not do
I've
flying into
never
another
been
airport?
to Dubrovnik, but
Okay.
the airport Dubrovnik, like I've been to Croatia. I've always kind of wanted to go to Dubrovnik, but it sort of dogs me this airport because like I was in Albania and I wanted to get to Serbia and like inter-Europe flights kind of sucked. And it seems like there's sort of like little like hubs that are good for getting to the rest of Europe that usually cater to vacationers. So the least painful flight would be like get to Dubrovnik and it really opens up from there. Same with Corfu, Greece. So you can take a hydrofoil boat like 30 minutes from Corfu over to Albania, and it's way better. You can just fly to Corfu. There's a
Interesting.
gazillion flights from, I think you can fly from the US to Corfu even. It's a massive hub. So a lot of travelers will go there and then you shoot over across the sea to Albania. Same with like Dubrovnik. It's like 2, 3 countries above it in the Balkans. But if you can get to Dubrovnik, like boom, like you can go anywhere from there.
This is exactly the problem that I'm working with right now. And I actually thought that Dubrovnik was going to be this hub where you could get anywhere, but it turned out getting from there to Milan was actually harder, and there were no nonstop flights on the days I was looking. So we're actually going to drive up the coast to Split,
Okay.
or go the other way and go down to Montenegro and go to is it Kotor?
You know, I don't think you can drive to Dubrovnik. Well, you can, but you have to go through several countries. Yeah, you have to go
That's
through
right.
the
And this is not the
So you
EU,
need
so these are border crossings.
you need to make sure
We
you
would have had
get
to get
the add-on
transport.
insurance.
Now, all of those things,
It's
right?
supposed to be a beautiful drive, though.
I'm sure it'd be insane. And honestly, this is that was the last version. This is V12 of the spreadsheet, and we have switched over to now we're just going right in and out. But I'll let you know. I feel like there's so many points of failure on this trip. So another episode, we're going to talk about all the ways that the trip actually failed. I haven't even set foot on this trip, but I'm really, really, you can tell I'm excited about this. This is what happens when you don't
It sounds
get
like
to
it's going
travel.
to be amazing.
I'm hoping. But we have a lot to look forward to. All right, so we're going to move on to our next segment of the episode, and we're going to talk a little bit for a moment about building a business. So this is our Founder Fuel segment. So if you are a founder, or you're an aspiring founder of a business one day, or I don't know, you just like listening about it, this is a segment where we're going to give you tips of that, we as co-founders of businesses, founders and co-founders of businesses, are using actively to build our businesses. And we're actually going to talk about a topic that I think probably every startup founder at some point thinks about, which is Y Combinator. It is the name in accelerators, but we are not going to talk about the accelerator itself. And we're actually going to talk about something that you can get into for free and not have to fight the 2% acceptance rate or anything. And this is just a free resource that they make available. And it turns out this is actually the story of how, Seth, you and I met. So tell us about YC's co-founder matching program.
Yeah, so YC has this co-founder matching program, which is free. It's part of something they have called startupschool.org. And it's basically like eHarmony or old school online dating for co-founders. So they ask you to fill out a lot of info on your profile, which is mandatory. And you kind of choose, are you technical, are you a marketing person, do you do product, ops, whatever, and what you're looking for. Do you want to be near for your founder by how many miles, etc. So all of this, and they sort of will present you like the best matches. And so you send a connect request and then you end up on a call. So it's very like, it's like if LinkedIn did dating. It's like you have a chat with someone and instead of like, let's go for drinks, it's like, all right, here's my Calendly, pick a time on there.
That's exactly right. Here's my Calendly. That's the like sliding into somebody's DMs. Funny. It's like, here's my Calendly.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting.
It's awkward. It's a little awkward. It's a little awkward as adults to be co-founder dating. So tell me, how has your experience with this platform been in general? Because obviously you met me, and
I think it's a mix.
That's cool. It's been a mix.
Yeah, it's definitely cool. Just meeting you has been great. But that's the win. Yeah, it's interesting. I've probably had like 20 calls now. No, less than that. Let's say 10. Somewhere in between 10 and 20.
What's your hit rate? What would you say out of the 10? How many have been like, I would give that, I would do that again?
I think at first it was low. like 50, but now I'd say we're at 75. I've had some pretty nice chats with people, even if it's just like a chat and we exchange tips and info.
Yeah.
I actually spoke with someone else in the travel industry, and she was just trying to be just like a travel agent, like flat. And we traded tips, and like people in the travel industry, especially, which there's not many of at all, I've noticed on startup matching or founder matching, sorry. Everyone's pretty friendly and trading tips, and there's a lot of info out there, but it is a more old school industry. But yeah, I haven't really had too many negative experiences. I did meet like one person where I was like, ugh, like afterwards, they're just like, I was like, yikes,
I
just
mean, but
very,
that's like that's like any dating
transactional.
platform. Come on. I mean,
Yeah,
there's always one where you're like, oh God, how do I end this? In general, it seems like
yeah,
it's been a success. Have you, and you went on there originally, just to be clear, you're building this app. You are the technical co-founder, or you were the technical founder, I should
yeah,
say. You were looking
yeah,
for a non-technical co-founder when you originally went on there. Is that right?
yeah. And I'm still kind of like on there.
Yeah, yeah,
The people are reaching out, but mainly the two things I've been looking for are people in the travel industry, like bona fide
yeah.
people that have worked in the travel industry, or OTAs, online travel
Yep,
agencies,
yep.
or like marketing, stuff like that. Looking for someone to unburden me a bit. I mean, marketing is fun, but the reality is like there's just so much work to do. And I do a lot of the technical stuff. And I have an amazing team with me too, like helping me with like the front end and the app development and some QA and a great, amazing designer. But that's like a whole world of engineering. But you need to also be working on getting traction, marketing, and that's a whole nother thing. So, I mean, it is nice. There are pros and cons for sure to be a solo founder, but it can be nice even just to have someone to bounce ideas off of, and as well as I can definitely see the benefit having a co-founder. You can just do, if you have a good rhythm, you can just do things twice as fast if you can split up the
Yeah, no kidding.
responsibilities.
I can't even imagine you like as the technical founder for you to have to think about this whole other set of problems that are go to market and all those things. That's not necessarily what you're.
It's like, yeah, it's hard to switch gears. Like,
Yeah,
if you're just programming for like 2 hours,
yeah,
3 hours, you're like, all right, now let's do like write some marketing copy. It's like really
yeah.
difficult, and I usually have a lot of success if I like go somewhere else, like change location. It's almost like you're like
Mhm.
stepping into a different role.
That's cool. I like that as a tip. Like literally segment your styles of work by that. Okay, so you've had some good experiences. Obviously, you met me, and the way we honestly, really, the way you reached out to me just you said, "Hey, you're building something in travel, so am I. Let's chat." And we ended
Yeah,
up having just a great vibe, great rapport, and trading a lot of really good tips. Like it's been so cool to see some of the things that you're doing, and I know you've asked me, about some of the things that we're doing, and I've just learned a lot. And so this has been a huge resource for us. I'd say, for me, I agree, it's hit or miss, definitely, but that's like any thing where you're meeting strangers, right? But generally,
yeah,
I think my take on the founder co-founder matching platform is the caliber of people is on average it's really strong. I've met some people who are incredibly talented, who have either built multiple startups, or just are really talented and looking to meet other people. And I'd say my hit rate is at least 75% of people who are really really strong CVs. They might not be a good match necessarily, but they're really smart people, and there's something to learn from every one of them. So and in fact, we actually met our iOS engineer, the who's working on our front end. We met on the platform, and he is just incredible. And he's like you, he's working a full-time job as a developer, but he's now working building our front end. So this is a real platform that you can go on and meet people who can be really consequential in building a business. And I think the best part of it all is it's free.
yeah. It's free. Everyone's, like you said, like really high caliber, but
Yeah.
also keen and interested to talk to you.
Yep. Yeah. And look, I would say to anybody who's listening, and I would say this to a friend, is go sign up. If you're just interested in getting into the entrepreneurship world, go and just start talking to people, whether it's just to meet people, to network, or find, new friends. It's a great place to check out. So we recommend it.
Yeah, I couldn't recommend it more. It's great. And the fact that you have to put some effort into your profile, I think that helps gate it. But it's inclusive, and like everyone I've talked to is like out there and smart and trying to make something happen.
Yeah. And by the way, we should note that there are other platforms that offer this service. So this is not the only game in town. I know. So I got an outreach from somebody actively building a platform called Coffee Space. I think you did as well.
Yeah. So did I. Yeah.
Yeah, some LinkedIn outreach, and I haven't tried their platform, although I did sign up for one or two others, and I think there's Co-Founders Lab out there, Well Found, which was spun off from AngelList. And I think the reason why the founder matching, why we speak so highly about it, is not only is it free, but it's really just meant as a resource to the community. They're not trying to upsell you on anything, and it has that, I think, that stamp, that imprimatur of Y Combinator, that just adds like this extra level of credibility to the people who are on it and to the platform itself. So again, we have found it to be a really incredible resource. And so that's the end of our podcast, but we will have more coming down the line. We are excited to be sharing more amazing travel hacks. And I would say just, don't tell your friends about this podcast. Whatever you do, don't tell your friends about this podcast, because there's so many good tips that I think we're probably going to be talking about from just a travel hacking perspective that, frankly, I don't really want to get out of the bag. Yeah. So if people who are listening, that's great. Keep it to yourself. No, but in all seriousness, we jest. But if you've enjoyed this show, the best thing that I think you could do for either of us is go download the Avasquatto app. It's on iOS and Android.
Yeah, it's on both platforms. Yeah.
Go get it today. Go download it. And by the way, shout out to your designer. I know I mentioned that, but I absolutely love the design of your app. And not only that, it solves such a problem that I've had. It's exactly what you described, which is spreadsheets galore, even my personal travel planning. So the fact that you're solving that real problem is so cool for people.
It's great for any distributed group, especially a bachelor party.
Yeah. Also, if you enjoyed this podcast and you're interested in learning more about travel hacking, we don't have a product out on the market yet. We're going to be launching to iOS later this fall, but please go find us at Disco Travel App on Instagram or TikTok and smash that subscribe button, as they say. Please like us or check us out and come back for more awesome tips and tricks for travel hacking and for building startups.
Can I just say I love the name Disco Travel App before we go? I think it's really cool.
Thank you. Shout out to Lecco, our iOS engineer who proposed it, and we've organized a whole rebrand around it. So we're really excited about that too. And we've got a lot of disco themed fun things coming down the pipe. All right, amazing. Seth, this has been amazing. Thank you for the time.
Likewise.
And we will see you all, or you will hear from us again.